Tom Henske was a soccer goalkeeper at the University of Virginia, and he won 3 national championships. We coached together for 11 years at Staples High School, but that's not the reason he's here. He was also a financial planner with Cowen, started his own company, sold it to Lennox Advisors, and stayed there as an equity partner and advisor until 2021. Tom is now a managing partner of Affluent Insurance Advisors, consulting on life insurance with high net worth individuals and their advisors, but that's not why he's here either. Tom Henske is passionate about educating parents on how to talk about money with their children. He developed the Money Smart Kids program and speaks nationally about it, frequent CNBC contributor, and Tom has a podcast right here at the Westport Library. So today on 06880, the podcast, Tom and I will talk about kids and money. Good Westport topic, right?
Love it.
So give me some basics. Why is it important for parents to talk with their kids about money?
Well, I've been studying it for probably about 15 or 20 years, and I've actually categorized it as a health and wellness issue. So having sat as a financial advisor for 27 years, I see the same cases come in over and over and over again. And what's happening is people get stressed out about money. So we all know that stress leads to health issues amongst a million other things. So I started to think to myself, why are we not spending more time talking about that with our kids and making sure that they are financially literate? So it really is a health and wellness issue in my mind.
So who gets stressed? The parents? And do kids get stressed as well?
Well, part of the problem is the kids don't get stressed, right? So maybe we want to stress them out a little more when they're younger. But all joking aside, yes, the parents get stressed out. That leads to things like fatigue, overthinking about their finances during the workday, loss of sleep. And if you really take that and put that out 20, 30, 40 years, that's an awful lot of stress. And so the concept is, well, why can't we do something to alleviate that stress? For me, it's just like about athletics. It's about good habits. Good habits tend to yield good results. Bad habits yield bad results.
So why don't parents talk to their kids about money?
There's a lot of different reasons why. There was a couple of studies out there, and when parents are asked who they think is responsible for teaching the kids about money, over 2/3 of them say the schools. But we know that in a lot of schools around the country, it's not a mandatory topic. So the parents really want to step up and begin to push the issue and having conversations at home, making it not a taboo topic.
So, I mean, schools are asked to do a lot. What should the schools be doing, and what should parents be doing?
Well, I think it starts even before the schools. It's the legislators are making sure that they make personal finance a mandatory class. I think 21 or 22 states now have some sort of mandatory requirement. We don't here in Connecticut. We do actually here in Westport have a personal finance class. But to think of kids going through 4 years of high school and not having any education on money, it seems like our time and our money is not being well spent. Well, so that's really what it comes down to. Why aren't they doing it? Because they don't have the curriculum to do it, because that costs money, and it costs money to train the teacher, and it's not a mandatory requirement. So when you start to couple this all together, you're getting situations where schools don't have it available. And even the schools of those 21 or 22 states, it's such a small piece. It could be a 2-week unit in a math class.
So we're not teaching about money because it costs money.
Yeah, isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic?
You've talked about, you used the term financial literacy. What does that mean?
Well, it means different things to different people. But for me, financial literacy is just understanding a foundational amount of information on a variety of topics. I don't think we should be in the process of trying to create little Warren Buffetts, right? Which kind of feels like that's what we're doing right now. I think we really just give them a baseline of jargon making it comfortable to talk about, and creating a curiosity. But if we can create a curiosity, social media will take care of the rest because they'll go down whatever rabbit hole is to learn about it. But if they don't know, they're not going to be inspired to go and look on TikTok and learn more about any one particular money topic.
And these money topics include?
There's a lot, right? So anything from understanding the value of a dollar to budgeting to spending, compound interest, even things like taxes, right? Who is Mr. FICA and why does he take money out of my paycheck? Things like charity or even money safety, cybersecurity.
Wow. One of a soccer player before your time at Staples called me a year after he graduated from college, April. He said, I just wrote out a 5-figure check to the IRS. How come nobody ever told me about that?
Because how would he have learned about it? Think about it. Really what had to have happened is either that person needed to earn an allowance when they were younger and the parents took a little bit back of that allowance and called it a tax, which people aren't even giving allowance, so taking it to that next level doesn't happen, or having a job while they're in high school. So had they had a job in the high school, maybe like scooping ice cream or waiter or waitressing tables, they would have gotten a paycheck. They would have seen that happen. It's not what you make, it's what you keep.
So when should this start? When should kids start learning about money?
I think every person out there is going to say, as young as you can, 6 years old usually is when. I mean, think about it. When the kids are young, it's really hard to understand why the big nickel is worth less than the little dime, right? Like things like that. So you can make it fun. I really think that the topic resonates with kids in their tweens and their teens. So middle school, high school, I think is great. So if you're a parent of a elementary school child and you haven't gotten going on the topic yet, it's okay. There's still time. There's still time if they're a high school student and you haven't done anything yet. But I think 6 years old is a great time to start. If not, then definitely by the time they're in middle school or they're a tween.
I keep thinking about the analogy with sex education, which, sex and money, right? And everybody says, you don't talk to your kid once. It's an ongoing conversation, and you do it on, the right time and age appropriate. Same thing with money.
It's not an exercise of bringing them in the room and saying, okay, we're going to spend the next 5 hours here, and I'm going to teach you everything you know about money, need to know about money, and then you're going to be prepared for the life of money. That's not how it works. It's instead of the fire hose method, it's the drip, drip, drip. And you never know. Look, having been a high school coach for 11 years, I really started to understand how the high school mind thinks. By the way, it was much different my first year on how I thought it worked than my 11th year. But what I found is that you never know when they're going to be receptive to the message. So it has to be a drip, drip, drip. By the way, these are concepts that are sometimes complex. And you need to let it sit in their head, let them think about it, let them research it a little bit, and not give them too much too soon. So it's you really have to play it somewhere down the middle of the fairway. It's not fire hose method. It's not slow drip, drip, drip. Somewhere in the middle.
You want to give me an example with maybe your own kids, Spencer and Sammy?
Oh gosh, that could be incriminating, right? So okay. So I'll give you an example. For my son, who started at Staples High School and then went to Greens Farms Academy, it was important for me to have him contribute to the cost of tuition. And it really was just an exercise of him appreciating and understanding the value of a dollar. So he had to get a job. So he started with one job and he was making $15 an hour. Wow, that sounds great. He was probably in 10th grade at the time. But then he quickly realized it was going to take an awful long time at $15 an hour to get the amount of money he needed for the tuition. So then he became entrepreneurial and he said, okay, I'm going to coach soccer. And he was making $40, $50 an hour. And then he realized he could get more than one kid at each training. So instead of getting $50 an hour, maybe he was making $90 an hour, giving some sort of like a group discount. But it was interesting because he really started to understand the value of a dollar and that money doesn't grow on trees. And from his perspective, he really was much more thrifty because he was having to spend his own money on things that he wanted. Now, my daughter, she saw what happened with Spencer, and it's interesting when you have two kids. She said, forget the hourly wage stuff. I'm going right to the entrepreneur. And she actually created a business, set up a website, started doing design. And then all of a sudden, she got hit with taxes. Okay, and her comment to me was, why should I have to pay taxes if I'm not even old enough to vote? Because she was 14 years old at the time. I think that's a really good point, but not one that I'm going to fight,
Right.
and not one that I plan to go to jail for. So she had a rough introduction to the world of taxes, but I think when they're doing it on their own and you're pushing them to do things like that, that's when they learn.
Wow. You do all this stuff nationally. You know, you've got a broad perspective. We're talking about Westport. This is an affluent town with, people who make tons of money, a lot of them. Does that put maybe a different kind of pressure on kids in terms of money? Is a Westport kid's relationship to money different or warped in any way than a normal American kid?
I think that that's natural to think that's the case. And we've seen it in a lot of cases here, for sure. I think the problem is that we as Westport parents tend to just want to solve problems, right? And it's easy to solve problems by sometimes throwing money at it if you have money to throw at the problem. So, but what I think happens is that we don't have our kids struggle as much. And I think the struggle is where they learn. And I think the challenge for Westporters is to really put this conversation front of mind and not think that it's going to take care of itself, because we're doing a good job with it. Unless you plan on supporting your child throughout their adulthood, it's the type of thing where you probably want to spend a little bit of time doing it. But the problem with that, Dan, is that these parents are working around the clock. For a lot of people, they're going into New York City. They're getting on a 5 a.m. train, going to New York City and not getting home till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. By the time you get home, you're toast, and you don't have the time or the energy to do that, to really research it. How am I going to do it? And how am I going to teach them? What am I going to teach them? It's hard.
So how do you learn?
Well, it's interesting. I've been studying the field for many years. I have Google alerts, Dan, set up all over the place on the words financial literacy, teaching kids about money. Anytime something's going on the internet, I'm getting an alert. And what I've found is that you haven't really had anyone that's solved the problem yet. And they haven't solved the problem because I think it has to come through the parents for now until 10 years down the line where it's mandatory curriculum in every high school. But the parents don't have the time or the energy to deal with it. And so they need to get the information in bite-sized pieces and not feel the anxiety of the imposter syndrome that goes on because they themselves don't understand the topic. And I think that's what you need to do. If you could give it to the parents in a way they say, oh, I can spend 10 minutes on this today, and then have the conversation at dinner, let's say, which you're already sitting down with your kids, and the kids are so sick of hearing the question, tell me about your day. And I don't know if anyone who's listening to this has a teenager, but if you ask a teenager, how was your day? Typically, fine. Well, what did you do? Nothing. Did you have any tests? No. Okay. And this is the most arduous experience ever to try and have a conversation as opposed to asking an open-ended question like, hey, what do you know about budgeting? Right? So think about it. You're sitting at dinner for 20 or 30 minutes. How about once a month, you just make it a money conversation? Doesn't that make things like a lot more productive, easier, and by the way, more interesting to them rather than tell me about your day?
Yeah. So you have designed all these different lessons.
Okay. So I'm a parent, number one. That person that I talked about earlier who gets on the train early in the morning, comes home late at night, that's the guy who you're talking to right now. So I basically created with the library a set of resources, or we're in the process of creating a set of resources for people like me, people who are well-intentioned, that love and care about our kids, that are stressed out about money ourselves, and just don't have the time or the energy to really put into what we need to for the kids. My theory is, as I said earlier, if you just spent one dinner per month, okay, so for 12 months, okay, and if you could just talk about it, your kids are light years ahead because now they're receptive to the messages that are coming out. So what we're doing is we've created 12 topics, some of which we talked about earlier, and we're going to inspire parents once a month to listen to our podcast that we created. Each podcast episode, I know this is daunting, under 10 minutes. Okay, so they can listen to it while they're driving to the train station or driving to get groceries or on the treadmill or going for a walk. It's not hard. In those 10 minutes, we're going to prep you on what the dinner conversation is going to look like. Here's what you're going to ask. Here's how they're likely to answer. Okay, when they answer like this, you're going to ask this question, and you're going to ask these 5 questions, and then you're just going to let it sit. But here's part of the fun for us as parents. We constantly complain about social media. If I see my kids staring at their device for another second, I'm at the point, Dan, where I'm going to take that device, I'm going to open up the window, and I'm going to throw it as far down Post Road as I can get it. Having said that, okay, now we're going to use social media to our benefit. So what we're doing is creating a series of TikToks. Yes, TikTok. I just said that. That
the
are
T-word.
the T word, right? The 6-letter T word. So that are going to introduce each topic to the kids. The parents will send the TikTok to the kid. Okay, the kid will say, "Look at this before dinner." Then all of a sudden they see the TikTok. Now, what does that do? It trips the algorithms. So now all of a sudden there's a greater likelihood that they're going to get more TikToks on that personal finance topic. Then they're going to come and have the dinner conversation. And then hopefully, as opposed to just scrolling through it next time, they're going to stop on those personal finance things and learn about it. Now, someone said to me, yeah, but there's a lot of misinformation on the social media. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, but doing something trumps doing nothing. So we're going to do something and see how it goes. And my bet is that all of a sudden now you're going to have kids who are talking about money in the classroom. You're going to have kids that are talking about money outside of the classroom. You're going to have kids that are talking about money with the parents. And if we really, really do this right, this is one topic that we as Westporters can all get behind. Can you imagine somebody saying, yeah, I think it's a bad idea to teach kids about money, right? There'll be someone,
Right.
there'll be some, but there are not going to be a lot of them.
Yeah. I love it. Give me an example of a TikTok, a subject and to engage a kid.
I'm actually learning about it through my daughter. Okay. And I said, I'm starting to think to myself, do I really want to be on the TikTok or should someone else be on the TikTok? But basically it could be like budgeting. Okay. And so you say, what's a budget? Okay. And you could someone's talking, what's a budget? And they could say, budget is just an allocation of resources. And then you could give a couple of examples. It could be for the mortgage or the rent or the food or the water or whatever it is. So, and then after a minute, you're done. Okay, this is not like a 5-minute thing they're going to look at. Look, I joke with my kids, they're like 30 seconds max is what they have.
Yeah.
So if I'm getting to a minute, that's probably stretching it a little bit. It better be a very funny TikTok if I do. But that's the type of thing. It's just bite-sized pieces. It's in just making them curious about, well, what are we talking about at dinner? Now, you know you've hit it, okay, if they watch the TikTok and then they search more and they come to dinner armed and ready to know more about whatever the subject matter is than you. And by the way, that's fine.
Wow. I love it.
Cool, right?
I love it.
Yeah, and I think, it's funny, the combination of being a parent, being a soccer coach at the high school level, and being a financial advisor, I never planned it out like this, but it gave me a perspective on all this that's really unique. And I think I'm just pulling together different experiences that I've had. and making it for parents that are just like me.
Does it help you in your business with non-kids when you're walking into a meeting with a client?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a secret, and I don't want you to tell anyone, okay? My guess is that a lot of parents need to get the financial literacy themselves. So the beauty of this is, you ever I don't know, I'm going to my doctor for my annual checkup. For some reason, 3 months before, I start eating healthy, I start exercising a little bit more because I know it's coming up. When, as a parent, you don't, I said imposter before, you don't want to be an imposter. So what I'm betting is going to happen is that this is also going to inspire the adults to get their act together. How many parents of young kids don't have a will? Just a simple will,
Yeah.
okay? One of those 12-month chapters episodes is going to be about legal documents and wills. I'm kind of betting that that's going to inspire a few parents to go see their attorney or go online or however it is that people do wills nowadays to get their own act together. So the stealthy part of this for me is to help parents get their act together under the cloak of being the educator in their own home.
And that makes me think of the fact that a lot of times parents, spouses, are not on the same page financially.
I would say, from my experience, it is the biggest set of fights that not parents, married couples have in their own house. I'm sure there's the sex conversation too, which is probably beyond the scope of our talk here today, but certainly by all means, money. Typically, it looks like this. One spouse is a little bit more of a spender. The other one is a little bit more of a saver. And therein lies the difficulty because it's very hard to get those two together. Let me give you an example. I had a client that walked into my office by himself without his wife and said, we need to have a conversation in our house and I'm not getting through to my wife, right? He said, she wants to have 4 kids. Okay. I don't want to continue to work at this job, which I hate. And I'm making a lot of money, but I want to retire and go do something different. Even though I'm trained to do this and making a lot of money, I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I hate it. So I want to have the conversation with my wife that shows how many extra years I have to work for each additional child we have. And the national average is $230,000 a year per child. That's what it costs to raise a child. From birth to after college, and that's not including tuition.
Right.
Right. Story for another day, right?
That's one semester.
But listen to what happened here. Okay, so we then had this conversation, and I ran scenarios: 1 child, 2 child, 3 children, 4 children. Right. All of a sudden, before he even got anything out of her mouth, she's like, "There's no way we're having more than 2 kids." And it was this heartfelt moment that I heard because of her response right after that. She said, because I want my husband back. Okay. I'm sick of seeing you stressed out. Okay. Your health is not good. Okay. You need to exercise more. The people there, I can't stand that you work with. I want you out of there. And if that means we're going to have 2 kids, I want my husband back. And it was this unbelievable wow moment.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's what it's about. We are trying to prevent that scenario from happening to our kids. And at some point, we've got this terrible cycle that's going on right now. We're not solving it. And we're finally, enough is enough, and we're going to solve it.
So where, in the grand scheme of things, as you look at the world of financial literacy and kids and families and money and all that, are you optimistic, pessimistic? Where are we headed as a society?
Oh, I couldn't be more optimistic than I am right now, because I think that parents are sick and tired of being sick and tired. I think everything that we've gone through in this country over the last couple of years, I think people have had it. They're putting their foot down on a lot of things that we've done just because we've created bad habits. This whole great resignation and, we talked about traveling into New York City. Why am I getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go? Can I work from home? All these, we're questioning everything, and we are questioning money in a way that we never had. And I think the parents are just dying to get little chunks of information and create a different, a better life. Dan, think about what, as parents, we spend money on. Okay, there is no tutor we won't get for our kids, or SAT or ACT prep class, or personal trainer, soccer skills coach, you name it, right? So we spend all this money and time on stuff that is important. But I would say that the one thing that every kid is going to experience isn't necessarily a foreign language, isn't necessarily an art class, where they're all important, and I think that makes a well-rounded child. We know everyone needs to deal with money when they get older. So if we know that that's 100% certainty that everyone's going to need to deal with money, I think it's got to get a little higher in the priority list, and I think parents are finally realizing it, and they're only realizing it because of their own lives, and they want to create something better.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the unintended consequences of the pandemic. So this is 06880, the podcast. Your favorite Westport story involving money?
Oh, my goodness. My favorite Westport story involving money. Okay. So there was, as you know, at the high school, the kids who have driver's license and have a car get assigned a spot. And I think it used to be, and I don't know if it's still that same way, that the older kids get access to the better spots. Sure. Okay. And then the younger drivers, that would probably be the juniors, they get access to the spots further away. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So one kid decided that he wanted to get a closer parking spot his junior year. And he paid money to a senior to swap spots. Okay. And that, I mean, and we're talking about the walk difference is inconsequential, right? And that was my favorite Westport story. It sounds terrible, right? People who are listening to this who aren't in Westport be like, oh, I'm never going to move to that town. Look, that's not the norm, but it is my favorite story for obvious reasons, because like, how did that become okay in somebody's house? So yeah, that's my favorite.
So what would you say if you were talking to that kid about money? If you wanted that kid to be financially literate, what would you say? How would you broach that subject, and what would you say?
Okay, great question. And I love it because you can start to have fun with this. I actually knew this particular kid, and I did have a conversation, and this isn't what we talked about. And I wish in hindsight that I would have thought to do it this way. I would have taught him about the rule of 72. And you're looking at me like, what's the rule of 72? This is like a fun party trick for you to do. If you want to see how long it takes your money to double, okay, take the number 72, divide it by your rate of return, okay, and that will yield how many years it takes to double. So let's go through it with easy math. Okay. 72, let's say you get a 10% rate of return, right? That means 7.2 years, it takes your money to double.
Okay.
And so what I would talk about is lost opportunity cost. So look, okay, you decided to take $500, which is like, how he even had $500 in his pocket. Like, that's a story for another day, again. But you take 500, you double it to 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64,000. You see how that like adds up? And then all of a sudden, when you help him realize that he just paid $64,000 for that to walk 100 yards less every day, even that kid can understand that it was like probably not the best use of money. You can then bring it into a charity. What could a charity have done with that $500? It's limitless. Again, high school kids will probably look at you and say, yeah. But you're just planting the seed, and you're just helping him, because he's going to wake up in 10 years and he's going to remember that conversation. And I'm going to get this random email through LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever the kids are on, Instagram or whatever, saying, hey, remember that conversation we had about the parking spot? I now know what you're talking about.
And can I borrow 500?
And can I borrow 500? Right.
Great. Any final thoughts on kids and money in Westport and any other related topics?
Yeah, my mission is to make Westport the epicenter of financial literacy and teaching kids about money. You've got a great class at the high school with Sarah White, Larry Klein, Stacy Delmhorst, who I met with. They're on board. Yeah, I know the kids are interested in it from when I coached. I can remember Daniel Brill sitting in the parking lot with me and me showing him an asset allocation that I was working on for a client because he was interested. So the kids are interested. By the way, you know who else is interested? The grandparents. So this is a topic where the educators, and how about like the banks? How about the local banks here or the accountants or the attorneys? This is something that we can all get around. We can all get around. Everyone can agree that we probably need to do this. And if we all come together and do this, think about, we will be the model for this nationwide. Because no one, what other town has claimed, oh yeah, we're the epicenter of financially illiterate kids? None. Guess what? In the next 10 years, that's what we're going to be.
You heard it first here with Tom Henske and the 06880 podcast, Westport, the financial literacy capital of the world. Tom, thank you. I learned a lot and appreciate all your thoughts.
Always love hanging with you, Dan.
Thank you.